Imagine walking through a frozen forest while the snow is falling so quietly it feels like the world has stopped breathing. A police officer and his German shepherd are on routine patrol when suddenly the dog begins digging into the snow as if the earth itself is calling for help. What they uncover beneath the ice is a puppy that should not be alive. No sound, no movement, just one small heartbeat refusing to disappear. This is not just a rescue story. It is a story about choosing life when everything tells you to give up, about loyalty that does not ask for permission, about a winter that tried to erase someone and failed. Before we begin, I want to know where you are watching from today. Type your city or country in the comments so we can walk this journey together. And now, let me tell you how the snow refused to bury him. Silver Pine Ridge, Montana, late December. The town lay pinned beneath winter like an old letter beneath glass, preserved, quiet, waiting. Snow fell in wide, slow spirals, thick enough to soften even regret. The wind crept between the pines with a low, mournful hymn, as if the mountains themselves were trying to remember a story they had almost forgotten. On Highway 8, the lamps glowed weak gold through the frost, and beyond them, the forest swallowed everything else. Officer Nathan Cole, 41 years old, stood beside his patrol truck with his breath drifting into the cold. He was tall, broad-shouldered, built like a man who had carried weight for many winters. His dark hair was trimmed short in regulation lines, already threaded with silver that did not belong to his age. His eyes were the color of storm water, steady and observant, a gaze shaped by rescue work, military years, and the kind of losses that arrive without warning and never fully leave. There had been a time when Nathan laughed easily. That version of him lived somewhere behind the eyes now, buried beneath memory. His wife's illness, the hospital rooms, the long nights, the silence afterward. The town knew him as dependable, distant, kind in quiet ways, the man who would stop for stranded drivers at 3 a.m. without expecting thanks. At his side waited Ghost. Ghost was a 3-year-old German shepherd, a K9 unit partner with a black and tan coat so sharp and clean it looked carved from shadow and flame. His ears stood high, alert to every whisper of the world. His eyes were dark amber, intelligent, ancient in the way only working dogs seem, as if they remember things humans never learned. He had been trained in search and rescue, narcotics, and avalanche response, but what defined Ghost most was his stillness. He did not fidget. He did not rush. He observed, calculated, and when he moved, he did so with purpose. Nathan trusted Ghost with his life. The radio cracked. "Unit 12, we have possible vehicle tracks off the North Ridge Service Road. Could be nothing, but Fish and Wildlife had reports of illegal trapping activity this week. Can you take a look?" Nathan pressed the receiver. "Copy that. En route." He closed the door of the truck. Snow whispered under the tires as they turned north, climbing slowly along the forest edge where the pines grew so dense the daylight itself seemed to hesitate before entering. The ridge trail was abandoned, narrow, lined with frozen brush and half-buried fencing from some long-gone cattle boundary. No one came here in winter, no one sensible. Nathan parked, checked his gear, and unclipped Ghost's harness. They moved together into the trees. The forest was silent in the way only winter forests are, not empty, but holding its breath. Snow layered the branches so thick the pine needles bowed. Somewhere deep in the timber, an owl turned its head. Somewhere else, something ran, then stopped. Ghost slowed. His posture shifted, muscles tightening, ears angling forward. Nathan noticed immediately. "What is it, boy?" Ghost stepped off the trail. Then he began to dig. Not playfully, not curiously, with urgency. His paws tore through the snow, scraping into frozen soil beneath. Snow sprayed across Nathan's boots. Ghost's breathing sharpened, focused, almost angry. Nathan frowned. He knelt, brushing snow aside. At first he thought it was a stump or a buried branch. Then he saw the curve of a small ear, then the shape of a muzzle, then the faint blink of an eye. The world shifted. Nathan dropped to both knees. "Oh, no! No, no, no!" Beneath the snow lay a German shepherd puppy, half buried, the earth packed tight around his thin body. Only the head and part of the chest were visible. His fur was pale beneath frost, matted, the black of his mask dulled by ice crystals. One eye was swollen nearly shut. The other stared upward, not in panic, not in fear, but in something far worse. Resignation. The puppy was not crying, not trembling, not moving. He was still breathing, barely, the faintest flutter of life lifting his chest. Nathan's hands shook as he reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I have a buried canine, juvenile, alive but critical. Coordinates coming now. I need veterinary emergency response and animal control notified immediately." He ripped the shovel from the back of the truck and returned to Ghost, who had positioned himself low beside the puppy, body angled protectively against the wind. A low sound vibrated in Ghost's throat, not a growl, not a bark, something older, deeper, like a vow. Nathan dug. Snow flew, ice cracked, soil burned his fingers through the gloves. His heart pounded so loud he could hear nothing else. Every inch uncovered revealed more of the puppy's frail form. Ribs sharp beneath fur, legs pulled tight, one hind leg bound with frayed rope that had cut into the skin. Someone had done this. Nathan's breath left him in a rough sound. When the puppy was free, Nathan wrapped him instantly in the thermal blanket from his truck, pressing the small body to his chest. The puppy weighed almost nothing. His heartbeat fluttered against Nathan's ribs like a trapped moth. Ghost leaned close, nose brushing the puppy's ear, then stepped back half a pace and held his position, eyes fixed on the surrounding trees, guarding. Nathan ran. He carried the puppy to the truck, hands numb, breath burning. He placed the small body on the passenger seat, cranked the heater, layered more blankets, and checked the pulse again. Still there. Barely. He spoke without realizing it. "Stay! You hear me? Stay!" The drive down the ridge blurred. The town lights of Silverpine Ridge appeared like stars fallen too close to earth. The Silverpine Veterinary Center was lit bright against the dark. Nathan burst through the door. Inside, Dr. Evelyn Hart, a woman in her mid-50s with steel-gray hair pulled into a knot and eyes softened by decades of saving what could be saved, took one look and barked orders. Two techs rushed forward. One of them, Maya, a young woman barely out of college with dark curls escaping her cap and hands that trembled only for half a second before finding steadiness, took the puppy from Nathan's arms. Shock protocol, hypothermia, oxygen, IV warmed fluids. Now! They moved like a machine. Nathan stood in the doorway, coat soaked with melted snow, hands red and scraped, chest heaving. Ghost lay at his feet, ears forward, silent. Dr. Hart returned minutes later. "He's alive. Severe dehydration, frost exposure, trauma. Whoever did this intended for him not to be found." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Will he make it?" She met his eyes. The next 12 hours will decide. Ghost lifted his head. Nathan knelt and rested his hand between Ghost's shoulders. The dog's fur was warm beneath the cold of the room. Beyond the glass of the treatment bay, the small shape of the puppy lay under heat lamps, wires trailing like silver threads from his body, breath barely stirring the blanket. Outside, the snow continued to fall, thick and unending. But something had been pulled back from it, and the night, for the first time in a long while, did not feel completely silent. The storm did not stop when the doors of Silver Pine Veterinary Center closed behind Nathan Cole. Snow kept falling, thick, slow, relentless, the kind of snow that makes the world feel unfinished. The wind clawed at the windows of the clinic, rattling the glass as if trying to get inside. Inside, however, time obeyed a different law. The air smelled of antiseptic and warm plastic tubing. The fluorescent lights hummed with the promise of work, of effort, of resistance against the cold. Nathan sat on the floor of the hallway with his back against the wall, knees drawn up, hands resting on his thighs, still trembling slightly from adrenaline. His uniform jacket lay on the chair beside him, soaked through, the badge dull with melted snow. His face was pale beneath the stubble of a long week, but his eyes never left the glass wall of the treatment room. Ghost lay at his feet. The German shepherd's long body was stretched along the tile, tail curved loosely, chest rising in slow, steady rhythm. His ears remained upright, tracking every sound from behind the door. He had not moved since they arrived. He had not slept. His gaze stayed fixed on the shape beneath the heat lamps. Behind the glass, the puppy, the one the snow had tried to claim, lay on a stainless table surrounded by motion and light. IV lines fed into his thin foreleg. An oxygen mask covered his muzzle. Warmed saline dripped steadily. A heart monitor flickered soft green lines into the quiet. Dr. Evelyn Hart stood over him, precise, calm, her movements efficient without cruelty. She was 56, tall and straight-backed, her silver hair pulled into a practical knot, eyes steady from years of refusing to give up on the nearly lost. She had grown up on a ranch outside Helena, had learned the cost of winter before she learned how to drive, and had chosen veterinary medicine because it was the only place where pain and hope walked side by side every single day. Beside her worked Maya Lynn, 23, fresh from her clinical internship in Spokane, dark curls escaping beneath her cap, hands quick and careful, the faint tremor in her fingers masked by determination. She whispered vitals into the chart while adjusting the flow of fluids. "Temperature's climbing," Maya said softly. Dr. Hart nodded. "Good. Keep it slow. Don't shock the system." The puppy's ribs pressed faintly against the blanket. Beneath his coat, scars and abrasions told a story no one in the room wanted to hear out loud. The frayed rope still lay coiled on a metal tray, sealed inside a plastic evidence bag that Nathan had labeled himself before turning it over to the county officer who arrived moments after them. That rope was not an accident. It was not weather. It was a choice. Time crawled. Nathan's phone buzzed twice with calls he ignored. The town could wait. His life had narrowed to the space between that door and the slow blinking of the monitor beyond it. After what felt like hours, Dr. Hart stepped into the hallway. Her shoulders relaxed only a fraction. "He's holding," she said. Nathan stood so fast his knees wobbled. That's good?" "It's survival," she replied. "Not recovery, but it's the right direction." She glanced down at Ghost. "Your partner's helping more than he knows." The pup's breathing steadied when he laid down. Ghost's ears flicked as if he understood every word. Dr. Hart continued. "He's severely dehydrated, hypothermic, and suffering from acute stress trauma. There's rope burn on the hind leg, no chip, no collar, no missing reports yet, but animal control is notifying surrounding counties. Whoever did this didn't want him found. Nathan clenched his jaw. What can I do? Stay, she said simply. Animals fight harder when they know they're not alone. So he did. He sat beside the kennel once the puppy was stabilized and moved into recovery. He slid his hand inside, palm resting close but not touching. He spoke quietly, though the puppy could not hear him through sedation. Ghost positioned himself at the front of the kennel, chest squared, eyes forward. Anyone passing by felt it, the sense that crossing that invisible line would not be wise. Night settled heavy over Silver Pine Ridge. Snow coated the streets. The mountains vanished behind white curtains. The town's lights blurred into a constellation that felt too fragile for the dark. Sometime after midnight, the puppy's nose twitched. Nathan leaned forward. He held his breath. The puppy shifted, almost imperceptibly, then inched his head forward until his chin brushed against Nathan's fingers. It was not strength. It was instinct. A question asked by a soul that was not ready to disappear. Ghost's tail thumped once against the floor. Dr. Hart returned with updated charts. Blood pressure's improving. Oxygen saturation is stabilizing. Nathan swallowed. He's choosing it. Dr. Hart met his eyes. Yes, he is. Nathan looked at the puppy, so small inside the blankets, and said quietly, Your name is Rowan. It's the name of a tree that survives winter. The puppy's ear flicked. Outside, the storm continued, but something inside the clinic had shifted. The snow had not won tonight. By the time midnight settled over Silver Pine Ridge, the storm outside the clinic had become something almost alive. Snow struck the windows sideways, rattling them with the steady insistence of an unanswered question. Wind slid through the pines and down the empty streets, carrying the hollow music of winter. Inside the Silver Pine Veterinary Center, however, the world was reduced to breath, pulse, and the thin glowing lines of machines. Nathan Cole had not moved from his place beside Rowan's kennel. His boots were still wet with snow. His uniform shirt smelled faintly of smoke and pine and antiseptic. The stubble on his jaw had darkened with the passing hours, but his eyes were clear and wide, fixed on the small body beneath the blankets. He had learned long ago, during search and rescue deployments overseas, that there were moments when standing watch mattered more than any order, any rank, any exhaustion. This was one of those moments. Ghost remained at his post. The German shepherd's broad frame lay stretched along the tile in front of the kennel, head resting on his paws, eyes never closing. He had not barked once. He had not whimpered. His presence was not loud. It was absolute. Staff moved around him carefully, instinctively, as if stepping around something sacred. Rowan lay curled on his side beneath the warming lights. The puppy's chest lifted in faint, shallow movements. IV tubing snaked from his foreleg. The oxygen mask fogged lightly with each breath. His ears were no longer pressed flat in surrender, but they did not yet rise either. He existed in the fragile space between here and not here. Dr. Evelyn Hart stood at the foot of the kennel, reviewing charts. Her silver hair had come loose from its knot, a few strands brushing her cheek, the only sign of fatigue on a woman who had been awake since before dawn. Across from her, Maya Lynn adjusted the fluid pump, her brow furrowed with the kind of concentration that came from knowing every number mattered. "We've stabilized his temperature," Dr. Hart said quietly. "It's still low, but rising. Hydration is responding. Oxygen saturation is improving." We're not out of danger, but he's fighting. Nathan nodded, not trusting his voice. Dr. Hart's gaze shifted to the evidence bag resting on the counter, the frayed green rope sealed inside, the knots clumsy and cruel. That rope burn is severe. He struggled. Hard. Whatever happened out there wasn't quick. Nathan's jaw tightened. I filed the report. Sheriff's office is pulling traffic cams from the Ridge Road. Animal Control is notifying surrounding counties. Whoever did this, we'll find them. Dr. Hart met his eyes. For now, focus on him. He did. Hours passed in fragments of movement and quiet. At one point, Nathan stood and walked to the vending machine for coffee he never drank. He returned to his chair. He checked his phone once and then set it face down. He whispered to Rowan, telling him about the mountains, about the first snowfall, about the creek that ran through town in spring, about nothing and everything at all. He told him about Ghost's first day of training, about the time Ghost dragged him into a frozen river to save a lost hiker, about the woman Nathan used to be married to, who had loved dogs more than anyone. Ghost's ears twitched at the mention of the river. Sometime close to 3 in the morning, the monitor's rhythm shifted. Maya looked up. Heart rates increasing, slight tremor. Dr. Hart moved closer, peering through the glass. That's good. Nervous system activity. Rowan's body twitched, a small involuntary motion, as if some buried command inside him had remembered its purpose. His nose wrinkled. His head lifted the width of a breath, then fell again. Nathan leaned forward. Rowan. The puppy did not open his eyes, but his breathing deepened. Ghost rose to a sit, tail sweeping the floor once. See? Maya whispered. He hears you. Dr. Hart nodded. Animals don't fight for themselves alone. They fight for what they recognize. Outside, the storm pressed harder. Snow buried the road signs. The world narrowed to white and dark and wind. Inside, Rowan remained. By dawn, the worst of the night had passed. The storm thinned into drifting flakes. The sky beyond the clinic windows turned the color of steel. A weak winter sun struggled to rise. Dr. Hart returned with updated blood work. No internal bleeding. Infection risk is high because of the wounds and exposure, but we're addressing it. He's still critical, but he made it through the night. Nathan exhaled slowly, realizing only then how tightly he had been holding his breath. Ghost's ears relaxed a fraction. Later that morning, Rowan stirred again. His eyelids fluttered. For the first time since the ridge, his eyes opened, hazy, unfocused, but open. They found Ghost first. The puppy's gaze lingered on the larger dog. Something passed between them without sound or motion. Then Rowan's paw lifted, trembling, and slid forward until it touched the bars of the kennel, right where Ghost's nose waited. Contact. Ghost leaned in, pressing his nose gently to the bars, breathing slow. Nathan's chest tightened. He turned away for a moment, pressing his fingers into his eyes. The doctor watched quietly. That connection, she said, it's doing more for him than any medicine I have. The day unfolded with cautious hope. Rowan remained weak, drifting in and out of shallow sleep, but his vitals stabilized. His body began to hold its own warmth. His breathing steadied. Nathan did not leave. When evening came, Dr. Hart allowed him to bring something familiar from home. Nathan drove through the quiet town to his small house on Cedar Street, a narrow place with white siding, a porch that creaked in winter, and a living room that still held too much space where another life used to exist. In the back of a hall closet, beneath boxes of old uniforms and snow chains, he found a faded blue blanket. It had belonged to Max. Max had been his first shepherd, the dog he'd had before Ghost, the dog who slept at the foot of his bed when the world was still whole. The blanket still carried the faint scent of cedar and fur and memory. Nathan folded it carefully and returned to the clinic. He laid the blanket beneath Rowan. The puppy shifted slightly, burying his nose into the fabric. His body relaxed. For the first time since the ridge, he slept without trembling. Ghost lay beside the kennel, breathing slow, his presence unwavering. Dr. Hart stood at the doorway, watching them. "He's not just surviving," she said quietly. "He's choosing to stay." Nathan looked at Rowan's small chest rising and falling. "So am I." The night settled again over Silver Pine Ridge, gentler this time, the storm finally loosening its grip on the mountains. Rowan slept. Ghost kept watch, and between them, in the quiet glow of the clinic lights, the snow had lost its claim. Morning did not arrive all at once in Silver Pine Ridge. It crept in, cautious and pale, slipping between the curtains of cloud that still clung to the mountains after the storm. Snow lay in smooth, untouched drifts along the streets, glittering faintly beneath the early light. The town looked newly made, as if the night had rewritten it in white. Inside the Silver Pine Veterinary Center, life moved softly. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in the building's bones. Radiators hummed, monitors whispered, footsteps were measured, respectful, as though the staff understood they were walking inside something fragile and sacred. Nathan Cole sat where he had been sitting for nearly 30 hours. His uniform jacket was draped over the back of a chair, his sleeves rolled up, forearms marked with shallow scrapes from frozen soil and a long, thin cut where the shovel handle had slipped. He had slept perhaps 20 minutes with his head against the wall before waking again to the rhythm of Rowan's breathing. Fatigue sat heavy behind his eyes, but he did not leave. Ghost remained at the kennel. The German shepherd's posture had not changed through the night. His chest rose and fell in steady waves, dark eyes tracking the smallest movement inside the cage. He had allowed a technician to refill his water bowl, but had refused food, his loyalty anchored to the small shape under the blankets. Rowan slept. His body lay curled, no longer rigid with cold, the faded blue blanket folded carefully around his ribs. His breathing had grown deeper, steadier, and though his fur still bore the story of ice and dirt, warmth had returned to his ears, his paws, the fragile skin beneath his coat. Dr. Evelyn Hart entered the ward at 7:12 a.m. carrying fresh test results. She paused at the doorway, watching the three of them, the man, the dog, the fragile life between them, and something in her expression softened. "Good morning," she said quietly. Nathan stood. "How is he?" Dr. Hart held up the chart. "Better than we hoped. Blood pressure continues to stabilize. Temperature is nearly normal. No signs of internal bleeding. We're still watching for infection from the rope wounds, but he's responding." Nathan released a breath that felt like it had been trapped in his chest since the ridge. Maya Lynn followed behind her, hair pulled back into a tight bun, eyes ringed with exhaustion, but bright with something like pride. "He tried to lift his head around 5, she added. "Didn't make it far, but the effort was there." Nathan crouched beside the kennel. "Rowan," he murmured. The puppy's eyelids fluttered. Slowly, with effort that seemed too heavy for such a small body, Rowan's eyes opened. They were still clouded by exhaustion, but they were awake. For a moment the world narrowed to that gaze. Rowan's eyes found Ghost first. His breathing changed. The faint tension that lived in his body eased just a little, as if the presence of the larger shepherd had anchored him to something solid. Then his eyes shifted. They found Nathan. Recognition did not come with joy or fear. It came with something quieter, deeper. A question, perhaps. A wondering. The beginning of trust. Rowan's muzzle moved. No sound came out. Nathan leaned closer. "You're safe. You hear me? You're safe now." Rowan's ears twitched. Ghost's tail thumped once. Dr. Hart observed from the doorway, her voice low. "That right there? That's consciousness returning. He knows where he is." Nathan reached into the kennel slowly, careful not to touch the IV line. He placed his hand near Rowan's chin. Rowan hesitated. Then he moved. His small head lifted, shaky and uncertain, until his chin came to rest against Nathan's palm. The contact was light, fragile, but deliberate. Nathan did not move. For a long moment the room existed only in breath and warmth, and the quiet hum of life refusing to give up. Dr. Hart cleared her throat. "I think he's earned his name." Nathan smiled faintly. "He already has one." She nodded. "Tell me." "Rowan," Nathan said. "A tree that survives winter. The one that grows berries when everything else is bare." Dr. Hart's eyes softened. It fits him. The day unfolded gently. Rowan drifted in and out of sleep, but his eyes opened more often now. He accepted small drops of water from a syringe, then a few careful spoonfuls of softened food. His stomach accepted it. His body held the warmth. Ghost never left his post. When the sun climbed higher, its pale light filtered through the clinic windows and spilled across the floor. Snow outside shimmered. The world felt distant, almost unreal, as if the building itself existed between seasons. In the afternoon, Rowan attempted to move again. Maya noticed first. "He's trying." Rowan's front paws shifted. His body tensed. He pushed just enough to lift his chest off the blanket. The movement drained him, and he sagged back down, breathing hard, but his eyes were bright with effort. Nathan's chest tightened. "You don't have to hurry, buddy." Rowan's tail flicked, the faintest movement, barely a ripple through his fur, but it was there. Maya pressed her fingers to her lips. Dr. Hart smiled. That evening, Nathan stepped outside for the first time since the night before. The town of Silverpine Ridge lay quiet beneath the setting sun. Snow clung to rooftops and pine branches. The mountains glowed faint, rose at their peaks. The storm had broken the world open and left something new behind. Nathan stood on the clinic steps, breathing in the cold, his thoughts drifting back through years of winters, of rescues, of nights that ended in silence and those that did not. When he returned inside, Rowan was sleeping again, his body curled closer to the warmth, his face less strained, his ears no longer pinned in surrender. Dr. Hart approached. "He's not out of danger yet," she said, "but he's no longer losing." Nathan nodded. "That's all we need." Later that night, the clinic quieted. The hum of machines became a lullaby. Rowan slept, breathing deep and slow. Ghost finally allowed his eyes to close, his body still guarding, even in rest. Nathan remained in the chair beside them, one hand resting against the kennel, his fingers close enough that Rowan's nose could find them again if he needed. And in the quiet heart of Silverpine Ridge, beneath a sky rinsed clean by snow, a small life had crossed the boundary from fading to staying. The snow began to change the sound of the town. In the days that followed the long night, Silver Pine Ridge softened. The wind still roamed the streets, but it no longer howled. The storm's sharp edges dulled into a hush that carried possibility. Icicles clung to rooftops like glass feathers. Sunlight returned in pale, cautious ribbons, sliding across the drifts and lingering where it found warmth. Inside the clinic, time slowed into something careful and patient. Rowan's recovery did not arrive like a miracle. It arrived like work. On the fourth morning after the rescue, Dr. Hart began the first phase of physical stabilization. Rowan's temperature held steady through the night. His hydration levels improved. The abrasions on his hind leg were cleaned twice daily, the rope burns now healing into thin red scars that told a story no one would ever forget. Nathan remained present through it all. He had filed the full incident report with the sheriff's office, logged the evidence, assisted animal control with notifications, and answered questions that carried no comfort. But when the paperwork ended, he returned to the floor beside Rowan's kennel, where his real work waited. Ghost did not leave. The German shepherd became a fixture in the recovery ward. He walked with Rowan when the vet cleared short-assisted movement. He lay beside him during feedings. When Rowan's legs trembled too hard to continue, Ghost positioned himself so that Rowan could lean against his shoulder, solid and unyielding as the mountain stone outside. Rowan learned to stand again. The first attempt came at dawn, while the clinic was quiet. The puppy braced his front paws against the bedding, his thin legs shaking like saplings in wind. Nathan's heart lodged in his throat as Rowan pushed himself upward, only to collapse a second later, exhausted, panting, confused by his own body. Maya rushed forward. "It's okay, sweetheart. Easy." Rowan looked at Ghost. Ghost did not move, but he shifted just enough to face Rowan fully, eyes steady, calm, unafraid. Rowan tried again. This time, he stayed upright for 3 full seconds before sinking back down, his tail tapping once against the blanket in quiet triumph. It was the smallest victory. It felt like everything. By the end of the week, Rowan could stand on his own for nearly a minute. He could take 3 steps, then 5, then 10. Every inch forward was earned. He slept deeply now. When he dreamed, his paws twitched, chasing something only he could see. His ears no longer flattened at sudden sounds. The fear that had once lived in his body like frost began to thaw. One afternoon, Dr. Hart brought out a soft rubber toy, yellow, misshapen, absurdly cheerful. "Let's see how he responds," she said. She placed it near Rowan's front paws. Rowan stared at it for a long moment, nose twitching. He nudged it once. It squeaked. Rowan startled, then sniffed it again, slower this time. He lowered his head and closed his mouth gently around it, then released it, then bit it again, harder. Ghost's tail wagged so hard it thumped the cabinet. Nathan laughed out loud, the sound breaking free of his chest like something long locked away. Rowan did not know what laughter was, but he felt something inside him answer it. He pounced on the toy, slipped, tumbled, and sneezed, his ears flopping in confusion. Then he barked, one sharp, uncertain bark, more breath than sound. The room froze. Maya covered her mouth. Dr. Hart's eyes shone. Rowan barked again. It was the first time anyone had heard his voice. That night, the clinic lights dimmed. The world outside darkened. The mountains leaned close to the sky. Nathan stayed later than usual. He sat on the floor with Rowan's head resting on his knee, Ghost curled at his side, all 3 breathing in the same rhythm. Rowan's fur had grown softer where the dirt and ice once clung. His ribs were less visible now, though still delicate beneath the skin. Nathan whispered, "You're not broken. You're becoming." Rowan's ear flicked. Over the next days, Rowan began following Ghost everywhere. If Ghost stood, Rowan stood. If Ghost moved, Rowan followed. If Ghost stopped, Rowan bumped gently into his side and waited. "He's imprinted," Maya said one morning, watching them cross the tiled hallway together. "That dog of yours might have saved his life twice." Nathan smiled. "I think they saved each other." Dr. Hart eventually cleared Rowan for short supervised outdoor exposure. The courtyard behind the clinic was small. A patch of grass, a few frost-bitten bushes, a fence that rattled in the wind. But to Rowan, it was another world. Nathan carried him outside the first time, his legs still too weak for the journey. Rowan blinked against the pale sun. He inhaled deeply, the air sharp and clean and alive. Ghost ran ahead, then turned back, tail wagging, inviting him forward. Nathan set Rowan on the ground. Rowan hesitated. The open sky frightened him. The memory of being buried still lived in his bones. Ghost approached slowly, lowering himself into a playbow, chest to the earth, rear high, tail sweeping snow from the grass. Rowan stared, then tried to copy him. His front legs bent too far. He collapsed nose first into the dirt. Ghost bounded over, licking his face. Rowan sneezed, sputtered, and then, to everyone's astonishment, wagged his tail. It was not much, just a small, careful sway. Hope. The following week brought strength. Rowan's steps steadied. His appetite grew. His coat began to shine. The scars on his hind leg faded from angry red to soft pink. He slept without fear. He woke with curiosity. Nathan arranged the paperwork for legal hold with animal control. 14 days. Notices posted. No owner came forward. And in the quiet spaces between forms and signatures, Rowan learned what it meant to be a dog again. The morning the snow finally loosened its grip on Silver Pine Ridge, the town did not celebrate. It simply breathed. The clouds lifted in long, pale ribbons. The mountains emerged again, their shoulders gleaming under fresh white. Pine branches sighed as the weight of winter slid from them. The world did not change all at once, but it changed enough to be noticed. Inside the clinic, Rowan felt it. He had been standing on his own now for several days. His legs were still thin, his steps still careful, but he no longer trembled when he moved. The quiet panic that once lived behind his eyes had softened into something new: attention, curiosity, a fragile sense of belonging. Ghost walked the hallway beside him, steady and patient. Nathan watched from the bench near the front desk as the two shepherds crossed the floor together, one strong and certain, the other learning what strength felt like. Rowan's shoulder brushed Ghost's flank. He adjusted his stride to match. They were not fast. They were not smooth, but they were together. Maya leaned against the counter, smiling. "They look like a team." "Maybe they always were," Nathan replied. Dr. Hart approached with a folder under her arm. 14 days, she said. Not one person came forward. Nathan nodded. "So it's official?" "Yes." She opened the folder and slid the adoption papers across the desk. "If you're still willing." Nathan's hand hovered over the page for a moment. He thought of the ridge, the frozen earth, the small body pulled from the snow, the quiet breathing in the dark. "I'm not just willing," he said. "I'm ready." He signed. That afternoon, Dr. Hart cleared Rowan for a short trial visit outside the clinic. A few hours, nothing overwhelming, just enough to let his heart test what his body already wanted. Nathan opened the door of his truck. Rowan stood at the threshold, one paw lifted, nose twitching. The open space beyond the door made him pause. He looked at Ghost. Ghost stepped inside and turned, tail wagging once. Rowan followed. The drive through town was slow and quiet. Snow-lined streets, closed storefronts, the mountains watching everything. Nathan glanced into the rearview mirror more times than he could count. Rowan lay on the blanket in the back seat beside Ghost, eyes wide, taking in the passing world. When they reached Nathan's house on Cedar Street, the place looked the same as it always had. White siding, narrow porch, windows reflecting winter, but to Nathan it felt as though something long empty had been waiting. He opened the door. Ghost trotted in without hesitation. Rowan stood at the welcome mat, breathing carefully, as if the floor itself might vanish beneath him. "Come on, buddy," Nathan said softly. Rowan took one step, then another. His claws clicked against the hardwood. Nathan's chest tightened. Inside, blankets lay folded near the fireplace. Soft toys waited on the floor. And in the corner, beside Ghost's usual place, stood a new dog bed, large, warm, absurdly overstuffed. Rowan sniffed it, circled it once, twice, then lay down. Ghost blinked, then calmly moved over and climbed into Rowan's bed instead. Rowan lifted his head, confused, then quietly crawled into Ghost's old spot. Nathan laughed. He sat on the floor between them. Both dogs extended a paw at the same time and rested it against his knee. That night, snow returned, gentle, unthreatening. The wind rattled the windows. Rowan stirred in his sleep, ears flicking. He woke suddenly when thunder rolled across the valley. His body stiffened. His breathing quickened. Nathan knelt beside him. "It's okay. You're here." Rowan's eyes drifted to the window, to the dark, to the falling snow that once tried to erase him. He froze. Ghost rose and moved beside him. He did not touch. He did not nudge. He simply sat. Rowan's head lowered. Slowly, he leaned into Ghost's side, pressing his body against the solid warmth there. His breathing slowed. The tension eased from his legs. Nathan rested his hand on Rowan's back. "You're not underground," he whispered. "You're in the light now." The storm passed. A few days later, the clinic called. Rowan had collapsed overnight. Nathan did not hesitate. He carried Rowan to the truck, Ghost leaping into the back seat without command. The drive blurred into headlights and fear. At the clinic, the staff rushed Rowan into emergency care. Dr. Hart worked without pause. "Delayed infection," she said. "His body's been holding more than we realized." Rowan's fever burned high. His breath came shallow. Nathan knelt on the floor of the waiting room, hands shaking, Ghost pressed against his side, eyes locked on the swinging doors. When Dr. Hart finally emerged, her face was grave but steady. "He's stable," she said. "Barely, but he's still fighting." Nathan sagged against the wall, breath shuddering free. Later, when he was allowed into the recovery room, Rowan lay on the table with IVS running, chest rising slowly. Ghost approached and lowered his head until it touched Rowan's side. Rowan's paw lifted weakly and rested on Ghost's. Nathan wept. 3 days later, Rowan opened his eyes again. Not the distant haze of before, but awake, present. Dr. Hart smiled. "This one doesn't quit." By the end of the week, Rowan came home for good. He walked through the front door like he belonged. That evening, Nathan stepped onto the porch for the mail. When he turned back, Rowan stood at the screen door, watching him with calm awareness. Nathan knelt and opened his arms. Rowan walked into them. He pressed his head against Nathan's chest and sighed, the deepest, fullest breath he had ever taken. From that day forward, Rowan never left his side. Ghost and Rowan became known around town as the two shepherds of Cedar Street. They greeted visitors at the rescue center, walked the ridge together, slept by the fire each night like one heartbeat. The house that once held only winter now held life. The snow had tried to bury him, but it failed. Sometimes God sends miracles in the quietest ways, not with thunder, not with light from the sky, but through a heartbeat that refuses to stop, through a dog that chooses to dig, through a man who chooses to stay. This story reminds us that when everything looks lost, God is still working, even under the snow. Even in the coldest moments of our lives, hope is never finished. It is only waiting for someone brave enough to believe again. Whatever you are facing today, do not give up. Do not walk away from the ones who need you, because your small act of love may be the miracle someone else is praying for. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from. Subscribe to the channel so we can continue bringing stories of faith, love, and second chances. May God bless you and your family. May He protect your home and guide your steps. And if you believe in His miracles, type Amen in the comments and let your faith be heard.